These are devotions for people at a social distance. My devotions, my personal devotions this morning took me to the 12th chapter of the book of Exodus, the story of the day when the people of Israel actually leave Egypt and begin their long sojourn, their long travel towards this new life. And there's a number of interesting things in this passage. It's Exodus 12, 37 to 39. The Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, beside children. A mixed crowd also went up with them, and livestock in great numbers, both flocks and herds. So they are beginning a new life. They are heading out, and there's this unexpected little something thrown into the story. A mixed crowd also went up with them. In other words, this doesn't just seem, I know this is how we usually see this whole thing, but it doesn't just seem to be describing a group of Hebrew slaves escaping from Egypt, but that others, presumably other slaves, are also taking the opportunity to flee and start a new life. A mixed crowd has joined together. So God's salvation is, yes, perhaps for a nation, but it is not limited. And we need, I think, one lesson we take from this is we need to understand that God's grace is bigger than our particular group, our particular ethnic group, social group, whatever it may be. God's salvation reaches out to many. But here is the part that particularly struck me as I think about our situation and where we are right now. They baked unleavened cakes of the dough that they had brought out of Egypt. It was not leavened because they were driven out of Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves. Now I find this interesting because, of course, the Passover festival is also known as the Festival of Unleavened Bread because traditionally Jews will only eat during the entire week of Passover, they will only eat bread that does not have any yeast, that has not risen in any way. And in fact, the practice is to so carefully remove all yeast from the household. That people will go through their house, their entire household, with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that there is nothing in their house that might possibly contain any yeast. And so this suggests that yeast is almost seen as a contaminant, something that spoils the ability of the people to celebrate. So one thought on the origin of this not eating any yeast for an entire week is that the yeast represents some kind of contamination. But in this verse, we see the yeast represents something else. It represents deprivation. That the people were starting a new life, but it was a total upheaval. Everything was up in the air. And because of that, they weren't even able to properly take the time to cook their food. They didn't have the time to allow their bread to rise, because of course that takes a long time and you have to sort of settle down to let bread rise. And that was why they had this awful, flat, unappealing bread, because they were rushed and they were escaping oppression. And this verse seems to suggest that the reason why they continued to eat their Passover meals without yeast was as a remembrance of that time of deprivation. They didn't let it go away. And I sort of think about this as I think about where we are right now. We've gone through a time, or are going through a time of deprivation, where we've had to realign our lives and live without a lot of things that we normally would have, including social contacts and going out and eating out and things like that are really good things that we enjoy, and we, through this pandemic, have had to not have those things. And I wonder when this is all over, will we just go back, and it will be over, will we just go back and go out and think of those things, or will there be something we will keep with us? Are there some lesson from what we've gone through right now that we will keep with us, that we will continue to observe? I know that I have, in the last several months, created some new rituals, some new practices around what I eat. And some of those rituals are, I think, much healthier. For one thing, I constantly make refried beans. And I never was one to eat beans. And beans are actually a pretty good thing to eat, and allows you to eat less meat and things like that. And I hope that that is a practice that I will continue to take with me, a lesson learned through this time that will continue to be with me and continue to form my lives. I think we have in this verse a suggestion that we need to be attentive in these times of difficulty and trouble. Look for those lessons we can bring with us and take with us and carry with us for the rest of our lives, because these things too are from God. Just some of my thoughts today. Lord our God, these have been difficult times, and they're not over. Thank you that you have been with us in these times and will continue to be with us even when we go out. And let us not forget what we have learned. Amen.